What's the difference between a struggling sales rep and those earning $250,000 to $500,000 plus a year? It's not talent, it's not luck, it's a system. Hey, I'm Marcus Chan, CEO of Bentley Consulting Group and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. After 14 years of corporate America, 12 promotions in 8 years, I've decoded the formula for sales mastery. In today's video, I'm going to show you the exact framework I teach my clients is creating record-breaking results in B2B sales. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your sales career to the next level, what I'm about to share with you will transform how you approach every single sales conversation. Hit that subscribe button and let's turn your sales potential into undeniable results.
Marcus, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm pumped to be here. I think we'll have some fun today.
I really appreciate you coming on, and in particular with sales, because everybody needs to get better at sales no matter what industry they come from. And that can be interpreted as a lot of ways. And I guess my first question that I'm really curious about is, in the early days of sales, what got you into it? And then what made you stick through sales without going on another path?
A good question. I think for like a lot of salespeople, and myself included, is I don't think, when I was a kid, I was like, I'll grow up, I want to be a salesperson. I want to sell things. Even when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was always like decent in school, nothing really amazing. So when I graduated college, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I was interviewed a lot of different places. And one of the opportunities was in B2B sales. Now, I didn't know its position as like B2B sales. And it was more so that it was a Fortune 500 company. I worked on the retail side of the business where it was rental cars. I had to basically wear a suit every day and people would rent cars and they had to sell them insurance. And I didn't really see it as like even a sales internship because I was learning about how to run the business from the P&L and everything else. So when I graduated, I had multiple different offers. They had a new division in which the director was my former area sales manager. And he said, hey, we have this new opportunity. It's business to business. We don't have any customers. We're going to open up 3 operations. We want to bring you in and we want you to help us basically grow the business. And I trusted him. I saw it as a huge opportunity. So I jumped head in. Now, I didn't realize at the time that it was considered B2B sales. Like in my head, I'm like, I'm going to help build from scratch. So I didn't even see it as sales. I just thought this is a cool opportunity to be on the ground floor, something really cool, and basically build it up. And when I got into it, this is in June 2007, I realized pretty quickly how hard it was. So, there was no real training. There was no real support. And I was told to basically go out and knock on doors, cold call people, and try to basically convince them to buy.
Wow.
And it was actually a real struggle for me because I never did anything like that before. I've been in customer service roles. I started working when I was like 5 years old in a restaurant. So like, I could do all like that type of retail consumer stuff. But like going out and basically trying to convince people to have meetings with me and like knocking on doors and cold calling, cold emailing to complete strangers was a whole new world for me.
That's tough. I
almost got fired actually. So my first couple of months, I was the worst rep and I was definitely very, very stressed. And, I remember my boss pulling me and said he's going to fire me if I didn't turn it around. Right. Now, eventually I did figure it out, had some success. And then I ended up staying in that career for over 13 years, got promoted a number of different times, won every award, did a lot of cool things, but ultimately stayed through it because, number one, it helped me become like a better version of myself. Right. So probably aligns that kind of personal development piece. I had to become a better version of myself to actually excel in the role. You become exposed to all your weaknesses in sales. Right. And then number two, it became a path where it didn't care about my skin color. It didn't care about my race. It didn't care about my education level. If I could deliver results, I created value. And when I created value, I could write my own ticket. And I realized in sales, it's one of those few industries you can actually do that in. So that's why I jumped right head into it. So, I did for quite a long time and it was an incredible run. And then I decided to start my own business and help people do basically what I did. So I've been doing that for over 5 years now, but it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, that's incredible. And do you feel like anybody can learn sales? Like it's a skill set that anybody can pick up despite their limiting beliefs, despite how shy or introverted they may think they are? Everybody probably sells in their own way and there's different tastes and colors of the rainbow. So I guess my question is, can anybody learn sales of everybody that you've interacted with?
Well, here's the thing. If you're willing to learn sales, anybody can learn sales. So if you have the open mind, I think you can sell. That's the first thing. It's also being able to perceive that selling is not a bad thing. And what a lot of people don't realize, like you mentioned, literally everybody has to sell. So a sales really influence, which is you're influencing a third party to part ways of time, money, or resources. So the more effective you are doing that, the better it's going to be. It doesn't matter what role you're. You could be an accountant, right? But you potentially have to sell internally to other stakeholders at your company, to your boss, to your kids, to whomever. You could be a custodian, right?
Mhm.
You might be selling like certain things, so they need to switch, can liners or something, right? So there's
Yeah.
always going to be some level of influence in every role that you're in, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you're open to it and you realize how high leverage of a skill it is, then you can learn to sell more effectively. But if you believe, well, I'm this way, I can't learn to get better, then of course you can get stuck, right?
Yeah.
And
You get capped.
you get
And I
capped. And
think,
I found actually introverts are some of the best salespeople.
oh, is that right? Is it because they try and learn more of the process opposed to extroverts are just naturally, they think they would be great, but there's probably a structure to sales too, where the introverts like those types of systems to build on, I guess.
Well, I'm actually considered an ambivert. So
Mm.
I'm tested right down the middle. So I was more introverted as a kid and then became more of an ambivert, just probably by the nature of probably the jobs I had, or I kind of converted over time. So generally what I've found, and I think Daniel Pink's book, The Sales Human, says ambiverts are actually the number one top salespeople.
Mm.
But introverts are also very powerful too, because they generally are better at listening. They're more inquisitive. They ask more questions, which allows you to connect deeper with somebody else. And majority of prospects don't want to hear some fast talking, smooth rep. They want to feel understood and heard.
Yeah.
So like having that balance is really, really important.
Yeah, that's great. I've heard sometimes salespeople will stutter, but it's all those little things that make someone more human.
That's
And it
right.
builds that trust right away, opposed to the slick sales guy, like you're saying, who's a good fast talker. I mean, maybe that
100%.
works before, but kind of like industries become saturated, sort of, the same old sales call becomes saturated too. So that's where it kind of helps out in a lot of ways. Throughout your journey, I'm sure it's got really busy at times and, just back to back. And despite all that, you've had tremendous success. How had you managed your health, your energy throughout everything else? Maybe it was your sleep, your diet. How did you personally do it?
Good question. So I'm going to kind of go back in time. It's been a bit of an evolution. All right.
Mm.
So like this probably started when I was 21, 22 years old. This is like almost 2 decades ago.
Mm.
So when I was really struggling in selling, and I really was like, one of the first things I did was I went to the library and got every possible sales book, and did that for a while. And what was interesting was the books that had the biggest impact on me actually weren't the sales books. It was these other books
Mm.
I accidentally found. So there were these personal development books.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for example, one of the first ones that really still sits in my mind as having a high level influence on where I am today was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within.
Mm.
And I realized at that point, if I wanted to achieve more, I had to become more. And that's actually where I started to get a little obsessive with personal development.
Yeah.
And it first kind of starts off like very like Tony's like, hey, affirmations, etc.
Yes.
Right? Wake up and yell affirmations. Like that was cool, right? But then I started realizing, I'm like, what are some other things I can do that will increase my performance,
Mm.
right? And there was things I would observe. So first off, it was like, okay, you know what? I need to eliminate things that hurt me,
Mm.
eliminate things that basically make me feel bad. So for instance, this is 2007, 2008 timeframe. The media would only talk about the recession and how businesses were
Mm.
folding and shutting down. So I cut out the media. I stopped listening to the news, and I replaced it with audio books on tape or books on CD or books on my iPod, right? I listened to things that actually feed me instead. I stopped
Mm.
reading fiction, only read nonfiction books that would feed me and make me grow. So this is where it kind of started to begin. And what was interesting is I started making that kind of small shift, right? As I started to kind of progress my career, I got busier and busier, busier. And fast forward a couple of years later, I realized, I can't eat the same way I used to eat. And I realized, I'm like, man, because I used to be a competitive swimmer. So
Yeah.
I was kind of used to just consuming like just a stupid amount of calories. I'll consume 8 to 10,000 calories a day. Then I go swim like 10,000 meters in the day,
Mm.
have a dry land workout, be crazy. And we just did a nonsense, but it was easier because you're in high school, your body's different, you're younger, it's just a little bit different.
Sure.
Now I'm in my mid 20s. I wasn't doing that same level of workouts. I wasn't necessarily eating like 8 to 10,000 calories, but I was eating like pretty unhealthy. A lot of processed foods, pizzas, takeout, unhealthy things full of GMO, whatever, right? So I started to learn about nutrition at that point and started to realize I need to have some better health rules. So I started to eat cleaner. I also realized my workouts weren't very well optimized.
Mm.
So I would go to the gym, take 2 hours to work out, right? And at that point, I was actually seeing my physical body kind of go down. So I'm like, I'm still working the same way I used to work out. I'm still eating the same way. This is a problem. So I started changing what I ate. I started changing my workouts, getting really monitoring how I was working out, getting more efficient with my workouts, and started to see better results. And this became kind of part of this journey. So kind of over time, over the next probably 5 or so years, I continued to kind of refine that and get better and better at that, where I started to like, take better care of my health, just eating really clean for the most part, except for my cheat meal, having super dialed workouts. On top of that, I started getting really busy. So by the time I was 30, I was running a sales org of 85 employees.
Wow.
So I was traveling a lot. I was in and out of planes. So it was like I was in a hotel room about 100 plus nights a year.
Wow.
And it was a lot. It was very high stress, right? Because it was also a big number to deliver. So I'm like, oh man, I need to continue to optimize, right? And a couple of years later, I'm like, I need to cut out drinking. So I cut out drinking. So I went from like, it wasn't like I was a big drinker. But I drank a lot more in my early 20s. Yeah. And then I peter off and I had a few drinks a week. But I started realizing I never slept as well, right? Never felt as good the next day. If I had one too many, I would feel it for days to come. So I started to understand these impacts. But on top of that, I realized I lacked the mental clarity. So for instance, if I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've been traveling all day, and I'm hanging out with my team in wherever city I'm in, and I'm with them all day. It's crazy nonstop meetings with them, and with sales calls, and trainings, whatever. And by the time we get done with dinner, I have a couple of drinks at dinner. Now I'm in a hotel room at 8 o'clock at night. It's already been a long day already. And now I need to open my laptop, have 200 emails to go through. If I have like HR situations, I need to basically respond to emails. And if I hadn't have a clear mind, I could potentially put something that's documented in writing that could potentially be not good. So these are things I started to realize, like, hey, the stakes are higher now. I need to become better at taking care of myself. And then fast forward, and then you can kind of see this kind of build of evolution, right? It wasn't like overnight change everything, right? And then I started my own business. I was 35. It was a side hustle before. I turned into a full-time business. And I went all in my business. Health is pretty good. I have certain rules for eating well, doing all these things. And then I started getting a little more sleep. And then I started sleep tracking. I'm an Oura Ring now, right? So
I was going to ask. I have an
Oura Ring now, right? I can't compare it to stats on the Apple Watch. So I wear like 2 different watches, right? I'm a nerd like that. So I then started to track and look at like my stats from even sleeping, et cetera. And obviously I started to learn more about longevity, like from exercise to diet to environment to sleep, and how basically it all 100% impacts us. Yeah. So from a layman's perspective, started trying to improve that by changing things on how I would sleep. So I test different things. So I actually have sleep apnea. So I've been diagnosed for over 10 years now. So I started to like really look at, like, hey, like my sleep quality is not great. Because now the stats to back it up, Okay, number one, I'm not getting enough sleep. And number two, my deep and REM are not that great either. Okay, what are things I can start doing? So, I try to start hacking things around where it's like, okay, I'm going to start having like my temperature in my house ought to go from 72 to 68 degrees, Fahrenheit at 9 o'clock at night. So it's cold when I sleep, and basically increase a little bit later on, right? Yeah. Blackout curtains in my room. Nice. Everywhere in the upstairs where we all sleep in different rooms, only red lights after 8 p.m., right? Right. Like, weighted blanket, like all these things, no screens, blue light screens. It's like little things I started to do, to improve. And I started to see actually improvements, right? So it wasn't like shocking improvements, but for instance, by being more attentive to my, from like 6 hours to like, averaging 7 hours of sleep. And then my REM, before I get like sometimes like 2-3 minutes a night. And
that's it. Deep, 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You must have felt like a walking zombie.
10-15 minutes, right?
Wow.
So it wouldn't be great. But with some of these tweaks, and I also observe, what did I eat the night before? Because obviously the impacts it. Like, what time did I eat? What did I eat? How did it process? If I have a cheat meal, how does it actually impact my body, right? So I started kind of tracking all this data, just in a Google sheet with all my Oura stats, which I do every single day. And then I'm like, okay, I can see these observations. Like, obviously, if I eat a huge meal that night and I go to sleep late and I'm watching a bunch of TV beforehand, completely jacks my sleep up.
Wow.
Right. So I can make better decisions off that. Right. But now it's like, it's still gotten better. It's not perfect, but now it's like, I try to get both at least an hour or REM hour deep. If I can get that, it's like, it's really, really good for me. Right. Yeah. But it's like, it has to be like the perfect combination.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're not really somebody who can function at peak performance with a little sleep? I mean, it's really not many of us, but most people need their 7 to 9 hours. But do you really find if you don't get that, it affects you during your day?
What's interesting is I think because of how I grew up and how I've been kind of wired over time, I'm sure it does. but I've trained my mind to not care.
Mm.
So like, which is a good and bad, by the way, right? So even though I didn't get enough sleep, I've learned how to just push through all the way through,
Yeah. It's that
you know?
entrepreneur's grit, right?
Yeah,
So
it's like
many of us
it's
are.
level of grit. It's not healthy by any means, right?
Yeah.
So I've been working on that. So I'm testing out something for the next several weeks where I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna start waking up at 4:45 in the morning.
Cool.
And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just restructure my day for how I'm gonna basically work, right?
Hmm.
And try to build a nap in if I can, right? Just in
Yeah.
the middle of the day. Just kind of see how it works. If I lose a little bit of the deficit in my sleep, I'm gonna take a little nap a little bit later because my brain works a lot better in the morning.
Hmm.
So like I just because of just how I'm wired, like I know like if I start working at 5 a.m. on
Hmm.
like some deep work stuff for like 3 hours, I can get so much more done in that 3 hour
Yeah.
block than the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So like I've been testing that this week. I'm like, this is kind of crazy. And I'm like, it's this week my sleep has been a little off now because of that, right? Because I'm not used to
Yeah.
it. And the other challenge I run into is my kid's got sleep apnea too. He's 7, so he doesn't go to sleep. His circadian rhythm's a little off too, where he
Yeah.
goes to sleep late for a 7-year-old.
Hmm.
So we've been trying to get that reduced, get that down to like 8 o'clock if we can. But
Yeah.
he's like a 9:15, 9:30 to 10 o'clock guy. And he used to be like 10,
Interesting.
10:30. Yeah, we kind of got it down to like 9 and 9:15.
Yeah.
And it took us like years to get to that point.
Wow.
Right. So like that's a big part because if I can get him down to like 8 o'clock, then I can go to sleep at 8:30.
Great.
And then it would give me the extra time. That's actually my limitations, but it's more so like the constraint of time.
Hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
It's
uncontrollable factors. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. All in your control. What's really interesting is you can get a genetic test and it will tell you what your hard wiring is if you're more of a nighttime person or a morning person.
Mm.
So I've worked with a lot of people and they've always followed like a nighttime schedule, and our body adapts to everything, to anything, right? Just based on evolution, to our environment
Right.
around us. And they think they're always that because they've just done it for years, sometimes decades. But we see genetically they're actually a morning person, a morning lark. So we shift their schedule back a couple hours. I mean, of course, if they can do it, if their schedule permits.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, it's a little bit of an adjustment, but 2-3 weeks, energy through the roof, focus through the roof. And all this newfound energy they never even realized they had before without coffee or anything else. So if you really honor those biological rhythms that you're hard coded with, it's amazing what can happen with your body. But it seems like you're sort of testing that out and getting there pretty soon.
Well, what's really interesting, Ryan, I'm glad you brought that up, right? So for years, I actually would wake up at 5 o'clock. A lot had to do with the nature of the work I was doing, whether I was traveling or if I had to go to the office as a commute. So I just had to wake up earlier because of the nature of it. And actually, what's interesting, on weekends, I could just naturally sleep in like super late, right? This is before kids. So, and I've been doing that for years. And then, running my business for years, I actually kept doing the same thing. I just didn't change that habit because I'm like, this is just what I do. I wake up at 5 and I kind of do my thing, right? And my wife was like, hey, listen, like, why don't you just try like sleeping in? Why don't you just instead of like waking up at 5, just try sleeping in at 6. And I actually did that for a year, right? And I still have a good amount of stuff done. But what's really interesting, since I made this shift this past week, I'm like, I think I have more energy. And I think it's weird. Like I wake up earlier, I get more tired in the afternoon, but my morning is like supercharged.
Interesting.
It's like very weird. I'm like, and it might be exactly what you're talking about because maybe it's like I'm supposed to be a 4:45 in the morning guy. I don't know. I'm not like a 3 a.m. guy. I'm just like, this is
yeah.
This
Kind of going back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have a 7 p.m. bedtime pretty soon. It sounds like.
I know. I'm not. That's the only thing. I'm like,
yeah,
hey, I need my kid to go to
be careful.
dinner. Yeah.
Still have to join the dinner, the family for dinner. But,
yeah.
So do you find, as people increase their health, like there's a lot of, entrepreneurs will say your life is your business and your business is your life, not like in a working way, but your business is a reflection of you. And I wonder with sales, there's so much training about sales scripts and things like that. But what about like that being behind the sales call, like the stuff that's in between the words of the sales script, like asking the right questions or the tone of your voice or being able to listen and understand somebody, like you were saying with introverts? Do you feel as people increase their own performance or their health, let's just say, that sales would increase too?
So good question. I love the Jim Rohn quote. When you work hard at your job, you make a living. When you work hard on yourself, you make a fortune. And a big part, I would say, to my fortune success in my sales career was, yes, for sure, I worked to improve my skills, but I actually worked harder improving myself. That was really the biggest thing. And it's exactly those things you mentioned, right? So it wasn't about memorizing a script. It was about how did I deliver the script. So similar to a movie, two actor and actors can say exact same script. One's going to win an award, and the other one is going to have a movie that flops, right? So it's the same principle. And when I think about this, especially in sales or high performance, you can only really control two things, which is number one, your attitude, and number two, your actions. And sales is a game of willpower, meaning you are doing things every single day that make you uncomfortable. From cold outreach, asking tough questions, being able to read your prospect and adjust to them. So it requires a tremendous level of discipline and willpower and being able to be present in the moment in the conversation so you can truly hear your prospect. And in order to get to that point, some people naturally, innately kind of have that skill. I didn't. So I had to learn how to do these things, which meant I had to work harder on myself. And this translates directly to sales because I can't tell you how many times, even before I started my business, I'd be hiring a new salesperson. They might have really good selling skills, but because they did not have the right good habits, the right mindset or high performance habits, it would show up at work. It'll always reflect it, right? And then you dive into it, it's like they're not eating well, they're not taking care of themselves, they're eating junk, they're eating garbage food, they can't process well, they can't process it clean, they went out party too hard, they drink too much, they can't show up to the prospects, they're not preparing now. So they have all these after effects, And actually, so early on when I was running these sales teams, I would literally train them on how to show up across the board. Like how to actually have good habits in place, whether it's making sure you eat clean and eat healthy, making sure you meal prep and bring your food so you're not going to a fast food restaurant when you're out in the field and just eating junk, at a gas station or something, right? To actually exercise and move your body so you feel physically fit, because when you actually feel physically better, you will show up better and you have more control, more discipline. And reality is when we don't feel good, our willpower goes down. Like we're just not able to do those hard things. It's like, oh, should I make the extra call? I don't really feel like it. Right. Versus if you feel better and you create the habit of doing it regardless, over time, you'll just learn how to take action even when you don't feel like it. Right. So even when you mention like, hey, what about those days you feel sluggish, whatever? I'm like, it's probably unhealthy, but I get it done. Right. I get it done. Right. I've learned to not depend on motivation, how I feel, but to create a habit so it gets in place. Right. But what's very interesting is because of that question, even with my own business on the B2C part of my business where I'm selling to individuals, like account executives, like we teach them a comprehensive system of basically running their life. Selling skills is just one component. The other components, mindset conditioning, and a third is high performance habits and get it completely dialed, right? And when they have it completely dialed, they are able to show up a lot better and be more present with their process and close more and actually enjoy what they're doing. And you can apply all these principles to actually life, generally speaking.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's really, the ability to enjoy that process, or, if their body is functioning just more efficiently, in order to have that same amount of energy, it's not going to take as much effort. So I've had many sales clients in the past where we look at their Oura ring data and their deep sleep goes up, their REM sleep goes up to, we have them about 90 minutes to 2 hours. And their sales will start improving. And they're saying, Riley, it feels like I'm not even trying as hard. Like the memory's better. And you don't really recognize it at first, but until it doesn't, then you feel like it's an uphill battle. But it really should feel effortless. I think if you got all the right things dialed, some people take longer than others. But once you get that in place, it's amazing how much, your emotional intelligence, your ability, the energy that comes through on the phone.
You're cognitively sharper.
Totally.
And it's not sharp because you're taking pills, you're drinking coffee. I don't even drink coffee. Like you're cognitively sharper because you're feeding your body the right stuff it needs. That's actually designed for your body versus a bunch of chemicals and junk and, 4-hour energies or whatever those things are out there.
And, a really interesting book that kind of speaks to what you said before. We're kind of dealing with sales all the time. Like, throughout our interaction with the people at the store, with our family, with our spouse, it goes on. It's not just specifically within a siloed sales conversation. And one of my favorite books on just negotiation is Never Split the Difference. And he talks about using tactical empathy when you speak with people. And there's, how to do that. Anybody listening, highly recommend that book. What is kind of your overall approach when it comes to sales? Is it more of the slower, nurturing approach, or do you think it's possible when you are selling something to do the one, sales call close? And I know it's different for every industry, but is there a general framework that you find is working better today than, 4 or 5 years ago?
Sure. Good question. So let me share first my personal philosophy, because whether it's a one call close or a long-term sales cycle, a lot of it has to do with really the industry you're selling to, the product you're selling to, what you're actually selling. It can vary quite a bit, right? So my philosophy is really simple with sales, which is to master selling is to serve at the highest possible level. So to master selling is to serve at the highest possible level, meaning you must truly believe in the solution that you're selling is going to truly impact that business, that person, that collective buyer, the whole organization, depending on whatever you're selling, whether you're selling in SMB to enterprise, whatever, right? That's first, understand that's part of the philosophy. And when you truly internalize that, you will do what's going to best serve the customer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I need to play a long nurturing process, but what do they actually need? And sometimes that does mean you need to challenge them to shift and think differently, because you know what it's truly cost them to take zero action.
Yeah.
And there's many methodologies out there. I have my own. I call it the powerful sales framework. And reality is look at all frameworks, like we all kind of borrow from each other, right? But I've found if I can cover as part of my process, 8 core components in the process, if I can cover at least 8 things as fast as possible, and there's a scale of 0 to 10 on how well you do it. If you can do it at a 10 level for every single one, you will actually close more deals. You'll close bigger deals and faster deals. And you compress your deal cycle drastically too. And the mistake a lot of people make is they don't fully optimize their process. So they're kind of just shooting from hip a little bit. So they're not able to be consistent. Every time they run a call, it's completely different. Versus when you have a framework you follow, it's much better. So I picture it's kind of like you're on the 8-lane freeway. Everyone's going the same direction, but depending on what's the traffic, who's on the road, you can you can merge left, you can merge right, you can speed up, you can slow down, you can get off, you can get back on, but you can go to the same place. Versus if you had no idea where you're going, you can get completely lost, right?
Yeah.
So that could take what maybe it's called a historically long process. Some people say, hey, it's typically a 12-month sales process when we start. And if you do it right, you can compress it down to shorter. Sometimes that's 6 months, sometimes it's 8 months, sometimes it's 1 month, sometimes it's 7 months, right? But if you do things right, you can kind of compress as much as possible. You're just optimizing for each situation a little better. Now, these 8 components are really, really simple. So powerful, it's an acronym. So P is pain. And now we're getting level 10 pain for the problem that they're having. O is opportunity cost. That's a cost of an action. Again, has to be level 10 pain for them to be able to want to take action. W, what are their wants, needs, and desires? E, executive level influence and decision-making power. Do I understand how they make decisions? R, resources. Do they have the resources, the funds, the timing, the bandwidth, the team to implement whatever you're selling? F, do they have fear of failure? Do they doubt what they're currently doing and get them to where they want to go? U, unequivocal trust. Do they have unequivocal trust with you, the salesperson, the company, the solution, the team they're going to partner up with? And then L, the little things. These are the specifications or buying criteria that you have to make sure you basically meet at the very bare minimum to even have a conversation. If you get to level 10 level for all those components, you will close deals far faster as a result. So that's what I teach. And then in reality is when you're consistent with it, you're going to have success with it. But anytime I've lost a deal, I found I missed one of the components or I didn't do a good job. I didn't fully vet it out, right? And that's just a reality. So that's why it's good to have a framework to follow, because it helps you optimize your own sales process.
What I really like about that too is where it starts from. It's kind of like the inside out. If you have to believe that what you're selling is truly going to help them,
That's right.
And for them to change their lives, if you're on their team, you want to sell them that transformation, and you see that, whereas they don't. And you have to guide them through that and challenge them sometimes in those types of situations. It kind of show them tough love to help them get there. But when they've done that transformation, look back, they'll thank you so much.
That's exactly right. If you think back to the best coaches you've ever had for any sport, it's generally not the person who's softest on you.
Yeah.
It's going to be the person who tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Totally.
And they're the ones who actually make you better because they see what you don't see. They make the invisible visible for you because you can't see it, but they can see it.
Amazing, Marcus. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did too. If people want to learn more about you, where can they visit?
Super easy to find. You can either, Google me, find me on YouTube, right? Or find me on LinkedIn, or head to my website, benleyconsulting.com.
Awesome.
Now, if you found value in this interview, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more proven sales strategies. So remember, mastering sales isn't about being pushy. It's about serving the highest possible level. And if you want to see exactly how one of my clients has negotiated massive deals and earning $100,000 commission checks like clockwork, I'll see you in this next video right here.